Check, check. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the City of Des Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board has the power under Iowa law and the zoning ordinance of the City of Des Moines to hear and make decisions on requests for variances and exceptions from the regulations in the zoning ordinance, to review conditional use requests, and to consider any appeals from any decision of city staff in the administration of the zoning ordinance. The members of this board are citizens of the City of Des Moines. They have been appointed to this board by the City Council. The board members are volunteers and they receive no compensation for their public service. I'm going to take a moment here to introduce our board members. On the audience's right is Tom DeCio. Next to him is Dave Gare. Next to Dave is Rhonda Cedillo. On the audience's far left, Heather Ann Rowe, then Marlis Jones, and I'm Mel Pins, the board chair. We've got a 7-member board. We have 6 of us here today. I'll introduce the city staff who will be assisting us with today's hearing. First of all, Frank Dunn-Young, senior city planner on the left side of the room. Next to him is Catherine Drehas, city planner. And then, backing up, oh, aren't you funny? Bert Drost. Bert looks different than Catherine. Bert Drost, Deputy Planning Administrator. At the end of the seating, Chris Hilescove, Zoning Enforcement Officer. And our meeting moderator down here in front to keep all the video moving along is Monica Vasquez. I'll also want to introduce our legal counsel for the Zoning Board of Adjustment, Mr. Gary Guidelock, to my left. I'll now cover the meeting's procedure. For some of you, this may be your first time in front of the board. You may hope it's your only time, but we will guide you through the process, so don't be nervous about that. But to give you an explanation, the Zoning Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board. This hearing will be conducted within the procedures and format as authorized by Iowa law and this city's ordinances. The meeting is open to the public. The meeting is being recorded by both audio and video for a legal record of these proceedings. The board members have each received a copy of the agenda and the staff recommendation. And for those of you in the audience, if you've not received a copy of the agenda, we've got them here in the little black trays by the door to your right. If you want to step up and grab one when I'm done with my opening remarks, feel free to do so. The board is required to base its decision on each item upon the criteria established by law for the type of relief sought by the applicant. The law applicable to each case has been identified in the written staff report. If the facts, as determined by this board, demonstrates that the criteria established by law for granting the relief has been satisfied, then the board must grant the relief. Otherwise, the board must deny the requested relief. Each item will be announced in the order that it appears on the agenda. Items that are listed on the consent portion of the agenda, which is our first section of the agenda, are not planned to be individually discussed. Rather, they will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless the appellant does not agree to the conditions that have been recommended by staff, or if there's an individual in the audience or a member of this board that requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda so that a full discussion on the matter can occur before a decision is made. And I'll come back to that consent agenda here in just a few minutes, and again, we'll help you through all of this. For the regular portion of the agenda, after an item has been announced, city staff will first give a brief overview of the appeal. They will present any written comments that have been received prior to the hearing. Then the applicant or their representative will be allowed up to 10 minutes to present their appeal. We'll then move to the public comment portion of the hearing for the item at hand. Anyone wanting to speak in support of, in opposition to, or even in neutrality of the appeal for that item will be allowed up to 5 minutes each to provide their comments. This will be their one and only opportunity to address the board regarding the item at hand. Once all concerned citizens have spoken, the board will then ask any additional questions of city staff. And lastly, the applicant will be given 3 more minutes for a rebuttal or other closing comments if they so choose. When speaking, all speakers must speak only from the podium located here at the center of the room. You must give your presentation by first giving your complete name and address. That address can be your business or place of residence as appropriate in the event you may need to be contacted for a legal notice related to the outcome of the appeal. All speakers are requested to remain courteous and to focus their comments only upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law has been satisfied. Speakers are also asked to be respectful of time considerations, and if necessary, the board chair will limit further comments by a speaker if they exceed their time limitation. After all comments have been received, the board will close any further public comment on the agenda item. The board will immediately deliberate the request and will make a decision here today on the appeal. Please note that it always takes at least 4 affirmative votes for any zoning appeal to gain approval. If your appeal is approved today, we ask that you wait until at least about 1 week from today's hearing. If you need to contact the city's Permit and Development Center to obtain any necessary building or sign permits that are related to your appeal. This will allow the decision of this board to be documented in the form of a decision and order. That document will be provided to you and city staff for the record. Any appeal that is approved by this board must be implemented, constructed, or otherwise utilized within 2 years of the date of the board's decision, or such approval shall expire. Finally, the decisions of this board can only be appealed in the Iowa District Court. So if you believe you have been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the court within 30 days of the filing of the board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the City Council to change those regulations, but only for future considerations. All material written or otherwise used today as part of any presentation is part of the permanent record. If there's anything you want to present today, whether they be pictures, drawings, or documents, you may do so, but you'll need to give copies to city staff for the record. And if you'd like a copy of anything presented today, just ask city staff after the hearing, and they'll help get you copies. Just some quick housekeeping. We'd ask that you avoid any undue conversation in the audience so as to limit distractions during the hearing. You're doing a fine job. Ensure your cell phone's been silenced. So far, so good as well. And if you need to use a restroom, as you leave the doors, you don't have to go back downstairs. There are restrooms past the staircase on your left here on this floor. Once the agenda item you're interested in has been completed, you're welcome to leave the meeting, or you can stick around and listen to the rest of the items. So that's our background comments, and I'm going to take a look at the agenda here and see with our city staff. We have 7 items on the agenda, or on the consent agenda, and then we have 3 items for hearing. Frank, are there any changes to the agenda?
Good afternoon, Chair. Staff is recommending that item 9, sorry. I will scroll to that. Where's 9? Recommending that 9 be moved to consent. This item is a use of an existing 5,200 square foot building, existing 1,400 square foot depot building, and approximately 4,800 square foot outdoor patio. It's an assembly entertainment use. It's been operating for some time now. Caterers have been coming in and out and applying for their own liquor license. Granting the conditional use would be consistent with our code, and we believe that it would it's reasonable.
So it wouldn't really be a change in use or activity just by giving them this designation, then they could get their own liquor license. Is that correct?
Yep. And they'd be able to have more control over what takes place.
And any cards or anything in opposition?
No.
Okay. All right, so since this was to be on our regular agenda before we consider moving it to consent, would there be anybody present in the audience today that would be opposed to us granting this requested conditional use for the Des Moines Heritage Center? If you'd be opposed to what was just mentioned to allow them a conditional use that would involve selling alcoholic liquor, wine, or beer, if you'd be opposed to that, just raise your hand, and then we can hear this as a regular item for the agenda. Going once, going twice. Okay, so seeing no concerns for that, would there be a motion by, unless the board has concern, would there be a motion by a board member to move item 9 to consent? Motion by Rhonda, second by Marlis, all in favor? All right, motion carries 6-0. Okay, so now we have on consent, we have items 1 through 7 and item 9. Again, city staff is recommending approval of these items. Some zoning exceptions, conditional uses. I'll read through them quickly because if there's anybody here in the audience that would be opposed to us granting the requested appeals on items 1 through 7 and now 9, just raise your hand when I list the site and we will hear your comments and we'll just go through that item completely. Otherwise, we'd be voting on a block to approve these. So item 1, the City of Des Moines Park and Recreation Department, a conditional use request to construct some public recreational facilities near 3825 East 9th. Anybody opposed to that one? All right, seeing none. Item 2, and I'm just going to look here. Item 2 is a zoning exception near 733rd Street. That's related to wall-mounted signs. Anybody opposed to us? That'd be on the arena. Anybody opposed to us granting the requested zoning exception for the signs? Just raise your hand. Seeing none. Semi-related to that, Polk County item 3, a zoning exception related to electronic and multi-display signs near 233 Center Street. Anybody opposed to that? Okay, item 4, also Polk County, vicinity of 233 Center Street. Again, wall-mounted signage. This is near the Iowa Event Center and the related exhibition halls. Anybody opposed to us granting the relief requested on item 4? Seeing none. Item 5, also at 233 Center Street, a freestanding monument sign, also related to just updating signage down there. Anybody opposed to item 5? Seeing none. Item 6, 833 Fifth Avenue, around the corner, zoning exception related to 3 campus signs, 4 monument signs, and 1 sign next to a driveway at 833 Fifth. The appellant again is Polk County. Anybody opposed to us granting item 6? Okay. And then item 7, also Polk County, 311 Crocker on the north side. Installation of 2 signs next to a driveway and 1 monument sign. Anybody opposed to those? And then item 9, I'll just read it again. That's the Des Moines Heritage Center, 120 East 5th, for approval, conditional use to sell alcoholic liquor, wine, or beer. It's an other use category. Anybody opposed to item 9? Okay, so seeing none in the audience, board members, if anybody has any questions or is opposed to us granting the requested relief on items 1 through 7 and 9, so speak. If not, would there be a motion to approve these items as listed? So moved by Marlis. Second by Marlis. All in favor? Raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries 6-0. So if you've come down for items 1 through 7 or 9, those have been approved, subject to the staff conditions, and you'll get a copy of that approval about this time next week. So if you'd like to leave at this time, you're welcome to do so. We'll just let everybody get readjusted, and then we'll move on to the 2 items we have for our public hearing. Okay, our first item up for voting bid today is item 8, a zoning variance request in the vicinity of 601 Army Post Road, and Bert will give us the background on this case.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Drost, planning staff for the city. Item number 8 is a request for a variance to a separation distance at 601 Army Post Road. It would allow for construction of a new veterinary clinic with an outdoor pet exercising area that would be within 20 feet of a residential property. Our zoning code requires at least 75 feet of separation from a residential property. If this sounds familiar to some of you, it's because this same request was before the board in 2021, but that approval expired after 2 years. They're now ready to move forward with the project, so they need to seek the appeal again. One small difference between now and 2021 was back then the city required 200 feet of separation between a pet exercising area and a residential property. Now the code only requires 75 feet. But they still need the variance of that. So the subject property is on the north side of Army Post Road. It's a former mobile home park that's been cleaned up, removed and cleaned up. They would be constructing the vet clinic in the southeastern portion of the property, and then the pet exercising runway would be along the west side of the building, which is within 20 feet of that first residential property here along Lally. The Army Post Road corridor contains a mix of residential and commercial uses. The Fort Des Moines Senior Housing is located just to the east. Okay. This is the site plan that corresponds with the aerial. It's an L-shaped property, but this is the east leg of that L. You can see the building here at the southeast corner, and then that pet exercising area where the cursor is, and then the parking lot. So really it's just within 20 feet of that residential property to the north and west. And then there are some elevations provided. That pet exercising area would be screened by an 8-foot tall fence, so really the impacts would be minimal. These are some photos of the site. This is looking across it from southwest 7th Street. And this is looking from the other direction. And then in our staff report, we have recommended approval subject to pretty much the same rationale that the board applied in 2021 when it was approved. The property does have some zoning conditions on it that really limit the use of the building, of the property to really the animal service use category. So we do feel that it meets the test of the variance. So we have recommended approval. And I just mentioned that since this is a variance to a separation distance, the board, if the board is inclined to grant it today, it does have to be reviewed by City Council, which would likely be on Monday, April 7th. Here's the consent map. We just got 2 comment cards back, both in support. You can see them at the fringes here. This one on Leland didn't provide any comment, just said they're in support, and then the same for the other one on Southwest 7th Street. That really concludes my presentation. I would mention that when this went to the board in 2021, the applicant did provide statements of support from those houses that are on Lawley Street just to the north. So we do have those on file. So at the time, those neighbors to the north were all supportive. So were there any questions for me?
Questions for Bert from the board? Bert, just a brief one as an underpinning in the zoning ordinance. So why is there a requirement to have a 75-foot setback for a dog run?
Sure, just for noise. A lot of times dog runs are just surrounded by chain link fence rather than, in this case, they're proposing a solid fence. So animals, specifically dogs, can, be loud. They can bark.
Okay.
So it's, the idea is to provide some separation from any house.
Yeah, because there's a neighboring residential lots right next door there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So in a residential setting, is there a house to house, is there a requirement for a certain setback for dogs in backyards of houses?
No, there's not.
So I could have 5 barking dogs right next to my fence,
Right.
and I couldn't say anything
Yeah,
about
if
it.
they were met the city's
Okay.
licensing requirements. You're
Okay,
right.
but in this case, since we have a different use than residential, we want to see a little separation there, correct?
Correct.
Related to the site plan and the layout of the property, based on the form-based code changes, is it required that the parking has to be to the, quote, behind the building and?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
the new code encourages the buildings to be pushed out to the streets with parking.
And in essence, the front side of the building is supposed to face the street as well.
Correct.
So if you got an L-shaped existing property based on the form-based code, it can be difficult sometimes to move the puzzle pieces around to, quote, make it fit. Would
That's
that be a
correct,
fair
yeah.
statement?
So in order to meet the 75 feet of separation, if you see my cursor, it would pretty much require the exercise runway to be out along the street, which wouldn't meet the intentions of the form-based code.
Gotcha. And they've proposed screening the dog run with the fencing here, and is that also a requirement with your recommended approval?
It's not, but the board could certainly make that a condition that any animal exercising area less than
Okay.
75 feet be screened by an 8-foot tall solid screen.
Which is pretty much what they're showing in their picture.
That is.
Okay. All right, that's clear enough for me. All right, anything else again, board members? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Bert. So the way the hearing works now, the applicant or representative of the applicant can speak. They've got up to 10 minutes to state their case. And we just need you to start with your name and address for the record, sir.
Sure. My name is Corey Sharp. I'm an architect with FEH Design. Our office is located at 604 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Mr. Chair, members of the board, city staff, appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm also joined today by Melissa Beyer, the owner of this property and the planned new veterinary center. Their veterinary center has existed on the south side. They recently celebrated 60 years in business. They're very proud to remain on the south side and are really excited to continue to invest in the growth of their business on the south side. So they're very excited about embarking on this large financial investment for them. Part of that reason for sort of this long delay from the previous approval was just trying to figure out how to get the numbers to work for construction. So we're excited to go back out to bid and get this project built and constructed. But with that obviously comes approval of this variance. City staff member did a great job of describing kind of the situation that we're in with the site that we have. I will also add that as part of the screening, we do have the fence. It won't be a sort of standard wood fence that you might sort of find in any residential neighborhood. It will be a commercial composite decking type style fence that will match the aesthetic of the building, as well as we do have supplemental landscaping that will go around that as well. So we'll have some tall tree growth, which will also, I think, supplement some of the acoustic concerns that you may have. So the current vet center exists at 6301 Southwest 9th Street. They do currently operate a boarding style facility out of there with outdoor exercise area just a couple blocks away. But again, they're growing, so they need some more space, and this site was a really suitable solution for them. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer anything that you may have.
Sure. Questions for Corey? Marlis?
Just a quick one. What's the maximum number of animals that you will have?
That is a great question. I'm not sure I know that answer. Melissa?
Yeah, come on up so we can hear you good. Just state your name quick for the record.
My name is Melissa Beyer, and I'm the owner of the South Des Moines Vet Center. Our boarding facility has a maximum number of dogs total at about 25. Those dogs are taken out individually, one at a time, supervised for about 20 to 30 minutes at a time. We do have a daycare which operates during normal business hours between 9 to 5. And those groups are between 5 to 7 dogs supervised at all times.
Okay, thank you.
And generally speaking, if we were after business hours, let's say after 6, 7 p.m., what activity would be going on in the dog run?
None. There's
None.
no dogs outside after 6 p.m.
Okay, excellent. Other questions? Corey, based on the nice site plan that you've got here, was it a bit of a challenge to try to make the puzzle pieces fit based, again, and not to deride the zoning ordinance, but, with the building facing the front, kind of a L-shaped obtuse property, was that a little bit of a challenge to move the pieces around?
Yeah, it can be challenging. Obviously, our job is to, try and abide by the code as best you can, utilizing creative solutions. So we've tried to screen the dog run as best we can. We understand that the building really wants to sit on the front of the site. It's also on a corner, so not only is it on the south side facing Army Post, it's also facing 6th Street to the east. And then the way that the topography of the site works out, you can see we've got some stormwater detention areas up there in the northeast corner. That's just how the site lays out. That's where the water falls. So we really needed to provide that in that area as well.
So that oval's not a Greyhound track?
That's correct.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, very clear. And this design is somewhat similar to what I think you guys had proposed when we approved this?
Yes.
And
Yep.
I think our approval was maybe just before COVID hit?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I think prices of everything has gone up since?
Yeah, I think the approval was in 2021, so we were still
Oh,
sort
it's
of
in the middle of COVID.
in the mix of
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, not the best time. I don't know if there is a good time to price new buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Corey? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, now the way the hearing works, if there's anybody here that wishes to speak in support of the applicant, they can step up and have up to 5 minutes to address the board. I think some of us know this young man, but we need your name and address for the record, and you've got up to 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and board members, my name is Tom Akers, and I own the property right straight to the east at 505 Army Post Road, and also I own the property at 609 to the north on Letley there. And I really think that this could be an improvement to the neighborhood. Sounds like to me their dogs are shut up inside. You know, if there was any barking, I think that would muffle the sound and this and that. And I've been, by their place where they're at right now on Sabbath night. It always seems to be kept clean and kept up and stuff. I think for improvement to the area, that place has been sitting empty for years. Had a lot of junky trailer houses and stuff. This is really a big shot in the arm for the south side to get this improvement done. So I think whatever it takes, I'd like to see the board and the chairman to try to work with these people to get this thing building. I've been expecting to see this 3 years ago. So anyhow, that's all I have to say.
Great. Tom, could you do us a favor and sign our speaker log? It's to your right there on the table.
This right?
Yeah, just put your name and then address there.
Okay. You want
our-
the address of my home, or you want the address of the...
I think the address of your home would be appropriate in this case.
Okay.
Yeah, for those speakers who are not already registered as the applicant or with their company. So we like to have our speakers sign the log. And while Tom's finishing that up, any questions for Tom on his comments? Okay. All right. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request? Seeing none, is there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition to the applicant's request or in neutrality? Seeing none, any further questions for staff here? Okay. Usually if there are negative comments, the applicant likes to, and gets the last hurrah here. You could have up to 3 minutes for your closing or a rebuttal. If you do or don't want to use that time, that's up to you. You good? Okay. All right, then we'll close. Do we have, well, let's see. Any questions for staff? Did I ask that? Okay. All right, so we'll close the public portion, go to board deliberation. Board members, any thoughts?
I had all my questions answered, and I think it's pretty good.
Well, I don't know every block in this city. I know most of them, but I live 10 blocks from here. I have for a very long time, and I can remember even when Army Post Road was just a little tiny 2-lane highway when I was a little kid. And it did have a trailer park that went back probably to the 50s, and that was looking pretty rough here just 10, 15 years ago. But the property had been fortunately cleared. That took some work with the city. It took some work with this board in those days. A lot of the mobile homes that were there were into the highway right-of-way, which was illegal expansion. That highway right-of-way had expanded to the north at one time, so the south end of this lot it's a shorter stack. The houses that are on the top half of the lot from the original plat have the original length. So in seeing this, I see this as a layout of a property that does present some difficulties. This board did previously review this. This is the current board now, but trying to make all the puzzle pieces fit. I don't think there's anything of their own doing here. This is the kind of business this is zoned for. There's limitations in this neighborhood district, or I'm sorry, in an MX3 district, what uses can go in there. So I'm in full support of it, so I'll make a motion to recommend approval, subject to the staff conditions. Any other comments, or would there be a second?
I'll second.
Second by Marlis. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Okay, now the real heavy lifting begins. So you'll get a copy of the approval on this in about a week. So if you want to get ready for real building permits and sign permits, you'll have that soon. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate your investment in Des Moines. Okay, that'll bring us to what should be then, I believe, our last item of the day. Take a look at the agenda here again. So item 10 is a conditional use request at 2121 Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway, and Frank will give us the background here.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board, Frank Dunn, City Planning staff. Item 10 is held by Dover Holding LLC. The applicant here today is proposing use of an existing a little more than 2,000 square foot building for liquor store use with sales of alcoholic liquor, wine, and or beer. The appeal is for conditional use for liquor store use, selling alcoholic liquor, wine, and or beer for off-premises consumption in the MX3 district. I'd like to go ahead and pull up some slides to show some context of the area. So the property is on the what would be on the east side of Martin Luther King. It's right here in yellow. Let's see. I took some photos. This would be facing east on the side of the building. And what would be the south end side of the building? This image is facing straight into the building. Here is another right across the front of the building as you would face north. And this would be facing more in the direction of southeast. And then we have one more that's facing what would be the south. So the applicant is proposing a liquor store use that would be open 7 days a week. The hours of operation that they proposed are 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. The property is zone MX3, which does allow for liquor store use, subject to obtaining a conditional use where the premises occupied is separated by at least 500 feet from a property where a church or place of worship, school, public park, or licensed child care facility is located, and then further separated by 1,320 feet from the property line where any limited retail sales, fuel station, liquor store, or other tobacco store engaged in the sale of alcoholic liquor, wine, or beer is located. Now here's a site plan of the property. This area is what we would consider a community node on the Plan DSM's future land use map. And that simply means, it's intended for a mid-sized center providing a range of daily needs intended to serve what would be a larger neighborhood context. This might consist of a mix of housing, retail, offices, similar serving a larger population and geographical area than a typical neighborhood node might. So once again, this is the property as they as it's laid out, as they intend to occupy. And here is internal layout of their facility. And so existing parking here, entrance, office, utility, shelving, coolers. And so one of the requirements is sending neighborhood notice. We did notice property owners within 250 feet, as well as we noticed the Von Damon presidential neighborhood. These notices went out on March 11th. Now, I'd like to add just a little history on this one. In December 6th of 2010, the city amended the ordinance to require existing businesses to obtain a conditional use approval prior to the issuance of any liquor license, wine, or beer permits after December 31st, 2013. On April 22nd, 2015, the applicant went to the Board of Adjustment for a liquor store use, which was denied at that time. However, they were granted approval of a revised appeal for a conditional use for a limited retail sales establishment, subject to conditions. Now, subsequently, the premises was vacated, and on December 15th, it was vacated, and it was determined to be vacant for a period of longer than 6 months, which would require someone to come in for a new conditional use if they intended to have such use. In 2019, December, the city had a citywide rezoning which changed the zoning of the property from C2 highway, general highway, retail-oriented commercial, to MX3, which is a mixed-use district. The applicant did come in for a conditional use, which was granted in August of 2020, to allow sales of alcoholic liquor, wine, and beer for off-premises consumption by a retail sales limited use. And so retail sales limited use are required to derive no more than 40% of their gross receipts from the sale of alcoholic liquor, wine, beer, tobacco products. So that is, at that time, that was one of the requirements. Here's the remainder of those conditions as I scroll through those. And last year, September 6th, upon inspection, it was determined that the premises had been vacant for a period longer than 6 months. So the applicant is required to file a new application, and is why we're here today. And so as part of the request, staff is looking at criteria and has determined that the applicant has not satisfied the criteria for liquor store use. The property is in close proximity to one household residential. There's residential properties within 45 feet to the north, on the property adjacent to the east, and on the property adjacent to the south. So staff believes that the premise use would not adequately safeguard the health, safety, general welfare of persons residing in the adjoining surrounding residential area. However, staff, in reviewing the criteria, believe that they have satisfied an appeal, or satisfied the ability to revise the appeal for retail sales, limited use, selling alcoholic liquor or beer for off-premises consumption. Once again, they would be limited to no more than 40% of their gross receipts from the alcohol, tobacco products. The applicant is meeting the 500-foot separation distances from the place of worship, park, school, daycare uses, and the quarter-mile separation distance from any other similar limited food establishments, limited retail sales, gas stations, convenience stores, liquor stores, tobacco stores, etc. Granted, the appeal would be consistent with the city's zoning ordinance, the city's planning design ordinance, and the comprehensive plan. We feel the proposed location operations would adequately safeguard the health, safety, general welfare of persons residing in the area, and the proposed use would not diminish or impair established property values so long as it operates in accordance with recommended conditions. As with all conditional uses, it would be subject to further amendment or revocation if the zoning enforcement officer determines that the operation of the business has determined to be a nuisance or exhibited a pattern of not meeting the conditions of approval. So staff recommends denial of the conditional use. For liquor store use, however, recommends approval of the revised appeal for conditional use for retail sales, limited use selling wine, beer, and or liquor for off-premises consumption. And here are the conditions that staff has written for this. And if I need to back up, just let me know. And as part of our notification, we did receive comment cards back from neighboring property owners. So we had a number that were in opposition. And here are those comment cards. Now, one of the requirements is the applicant holds a neighborhood meeting, which they did. This is the notice that they sent out. However, there were no attendees. Staff also, we had contacted city's police department to see if there had been any calls for the premises over the last 6 months, and there haven't been. What questions do you have for me?
Months?
Correct.
They've been closed down for longer than 6, so it's been empty.
Correct.
Okay. And the last tenant in there, was that like a game room? They have a game room going in there or something?
I'm not aware of that. I would ask the applicant to expand on that if they could.
Other questions? So Frank, prior to 2015, stores selling alcohol or quote liquor stores, just by zoning, they were allowed, right? In commercial districts, in simple terms?
Actually going prior to 2010.
2010 they did. Okay, so when we got to 2015, they were required to be reviewed and see if they could get a conditional use. And they did at the time, but this board said at that time in 2015, yeah, you can sell alcohol, but you can't sell alcoholic liquor, the hard stuff, right?
Right.
And I think at that time, and I know different operators are different people, but in considering the site, I believe in 2015, at that time, I was on the board, maybe Dave was, but we'd had significant problems at this address with all kinds of crime and activities in the parking lot, so we kind of ramped it down a little bit. But then in 2020, I think it was another operator came to us, and we did approve sale of alcoholic liquor, wine and beer, so the full suite of alcohol, but it would only at 40% of overall sales, correct?
Correct.
And that had been the kind of modus operandi until they closed. But now because it's been more than 6 months, a new conditional use has to be considered if they want to reopen to sell alcohol, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So I see, they'd like to sell alcoholic liquor as a liquor store. Staff is recommending, well, you can have retail sales limited, not including liquor,
No,
or including liquor but less than 40% of total.
correct.
Okay. So how generally, both intent and then, like how do you monitor? If it's supposed to be less than 40%, are you basically saying, hey, we'd like the business to be selling stuff besides alcohol and have that be the majority, right?
Correct.
And would you assume that everything, then that reduces the potential impact on the neighborhood, and if no complaints, no problems, everybody's happy?
Right.
What if there are complaints and problems? Then how does the city look at that?
Sure. If there are complaints, the zoning enforcement officer receives those, and then they will conduct an inspection and have the ability from there to audit. I can let
Yeah.
speak to that.
Because that inspection could result in an audit of their sales to determine if they're staying under the 40% alcohol, right?
Yeah, Chair, members of the board, Chris Halscott, Zoning Enforcement Officer. That's exactly right. We could come in and authorize a CPA audit to look at those books if that type of complaint came in. So we can request that per the conditions that are presented today.
So the business model of what they're proposing could be substantially different than what staff is recommending here under this conditional use. So they'd have to be selling 60% other stuff, milk, bananas, Pepsi.
Yeah, similar to a convenience store model, maybe.
Right, which is, I'm assuming, designed to support a neighborhood and blend in and have less potential problems for conflict.
Yep, that's
Okay.
that's the spirit and intent of it, I think.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions while these two guys are up here? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for getting us kicked off. Okay, applicant or representative of the applicant, you guys have up to 10 minutes. We just need you to start with your name and address, and you've got the floor.
Chairman, members of the board, Lloyd Ogle, 301 East Walnut Street, Des Moines. This site, I want to add one thing. Because of the vacancy, over 6 months, it's triggering a full site plan review. So we're going to have to expend considerable resources in redoing the parking lot by closing at least one of the entrances. We don't know exactly what that'll look like at this point. The other thing is that when we were looking at a revenue floor as a liquor store operation, we decided we're going to invest more into the site and put in a hood and grill and do prepared food out of there. And I want to emphasize that the business model we're looking at is these may hold a liquor store designation, but the look and feel of them is a convenience store with prep food. And in talking with Frank, the part of the problem with that 40% revenue limitation is it's going to be tough to get our return from that hood and vent system. That's probably about 150 grand total. That potentially, and also recognize the concerns that this has got some residential elements to it in the history of the site, that perhaps we could ask the board to maybe further amend the staff recommendation, go and require us to have the hood and vent system, require us to have prepared food, and in exchange let us go to 50% instead of 40%. It's just a tough business model to meet that 40%. It would probably just require us to throttle business once our alcohol sales got to a certain point. We just have to throttle that business until the next month, and it's not an ideal way of operating. So that's just a thought. If you do just go with the straight 40%, we'll have to go back and take another look at this and see if this will work for us. We can't say for sure that it would. We've got a responsible operator. This is a second generation operator. He's a recent Drake law grad, and is enthusiastic about the possibility to open up a site here. Jazz, do you have anything you want to add?
My name's Jazz Nagra. Do you want the address of this? Sure. Your address. My home address?
Yes.
Home address is 785 Southeast Oakleaf Lane in Waukee. As Lloyd mentioned, second generation operator, recent graduate of Drake Law School. Just looking forward to opening up a business here, continuing to be involved with the community, and trying to hopefully eliminate some of the stigma of the history of this site.
Understandable. All right, you guys ready for some questions? Jazz, is it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and if we could get you, just when you're ready to sit down, if we could get you to sign our register here. All right, so questions for Lloyd and Jazz? Anyone? Tom?
If I understand you correctly, your business model is just like Quick Trip across the street? Except you don't have gas?
I would, similar to, yeah, I mean.
Well, you were talking about a business model.
Yeah,
so I just was
business
trying-
model, while we have a liquor store designation, it would act and feel like a convenience store. We would have prep food, we'd have milk and the different offerings like you would see at a Quick Trip or a Casey's, the fresh, what's the Hy-Vee Fresh Marts. The issue, the challenge with that site is the amount of money we got to put into it to get it where we want it to be, and to put in a hood and vent system and stuff. It might not be viable at the 40% threshold, because we'd have to throttle our alcohol sales on a monthly basis to probably keep it under the 40%, which isn't ideal. But we do think a hood and vent system and having that prep food and having those other offerings is a preferred business model in that area as opposed to just your straight liquor store. And we'd like to go that route. And so we're suggesting, again, if we get approved on the 40%, we'll have to go back and run some numbers to see is this still viable for us. But we think we can make it a go for it if we could get 50% and exchange, put right in the CUP that we're required to have a hood vent system and offer prepared food for sale anytime we have alcohol sales.
Mm-hmm.
So then, I take it you're not prepared to go forward?
Well, we don't know. We can't say one way or the other. If you approve us on the 40%, we'll have to go back and run the numbers and see if we can make it work. We probably wouldn't be able to afford to put in a hood vent system.
Thank you.
So guys, a related question here. Is the building set up now so that you could do prepared food, like grease trap and all that stuff?
No, it's
Okay.
not.
Okay, because when you talk about doing a hood, if you start preparing food, then you got to starting to look at that.
Yes. That's about, we think it's about $150,000 price tag.
Yeah, yeah, plus doing the site plan fix-up.
Yep.
Yeah. And Jazz, I'm assuming you were busy in law school 6 months ago, because the day the door closed from the past operator would have been the perfect time for you to step in.
Yeah, I just finished up this past December and then sat for the February bar, so I was a little busy.
And I'm not going to ask too deep on this, but, have you looked around Des Moines at other locations that might, based on zoning, not have residential houses butted right up against it?
Yeah, we have a pretty strong connection to just that kind of area in general. We used to own apartment buildings near Drake.
Sure.
Being close to Drake is nice, as well as just downtown in
Gotcha.
general. We own the house that's directly behind this property as well. We just really like this property.
Gotcha. You've had your eye on it for some time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the gentleman? Okay. Thanks, guys. Anybody here to speak in support of the applicant? Anybody here to speak in opposition or neutrality? Any further questions for staff? Okay. If we don't have any questions for staff, we'll go to board deliberation then. So, I think most of us kind of know where this is. It's a busy corridor, but obviously, directly abutting that residential street at the corner there, and we got some houses. So we all know where it's at. Any initial thoughts?
My only initial thought, it's not been a very good location in the past. It's kind of been an eyesore for the neighborhood. And again, you got Quick Trip across the street, and then down the hill a little bit on where old Des Moines Lock Service used to be. I don't know if there's a convenience store still in there or not. But before the last tenants that were in there, did not appear to be good tenants. The place was a mess, signs all over the windows. So I would.
I'm sorry, we've closed our board deliberation. We're just doing board deliberation now. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I've said what I was going to say. That's it.
Yeah, and I think a key thing here to keep in mind, there were some, quote, bad operators in the past. We can't blame, this is about use of the site and the site conditions and the site area. I can't, entirely blame somebody today for something that happened before, but I don't want to set up conditions kind of like set the stage where we do have problems in the future. And to me, that would be based on things like just, things that don't go together. And having a complete liquor store right next to two single-family residential properties, regardless of who owns them. It's a residentially zoned neighborhood. Francis Avenue is a residential street. We've tried to work as a site with this in the past, and part of the way to do that was to get to the limited alcohol sales, the 40% or less. So they had been allowed to sell alcohol here at one time, and hard alcohol, but it had to stay at less than 40%. So we get to, I think, even what Lloyd discussed a little bit, give it the feel of like, there's food, it's more convenience, it's a little more family-oriented. The average kid doesn't ride their bike to the neighborhood liquor store, but they might come down to something that looks like it's a convenience store where less than 40% of the sales are alcohol. I just remain concerned that nothing has changed for conditions in the neighborhood and on the site. The houses are just way too close here to look at the liquor store thing. I think it doesn't safeguard the health, safety, and general welfare of persons residing in the adjoining or surrounding residential area. That's right in the ordinance. And we have an adjoining and surrounding residential area. A lot of times we don't in an MX3. There isn't an adjoining surrounding residential area. Or if there is, there's more separation than we've got here. I'd like to support them opening here, but I don't feel good about supporting it at just, hey, up to 100% could be alcohol. Other thoughts?
I should have possibly asked this as a staff question, but is that 50% recommendation even in our purview?
That's a good question. I think Gary can help us.
I do believe that that's a condition that you could put in place. So under the liquor store definition, it's a limited resale sales use where more than 40% of the gross receipts are derived from the sale of alcoholic liquor, wine, beer, and tobacco. I think that you could put a limitation on it at 50%. Arguably, if it was less than 50%, it may not be considered primarily engaged in the sale of off-premise consumption of alcohol. So it may not fit under that definition at all. But if you set it at 50%, or if you decided that you wanted to cap it at that 50% number, I think you still could approve it as a liquor store, but put that as a condition.
Oh.
Does that help, Marlis, with your thoughts?
Probably confuses
You don't have to
it.
tell me what you, yeah. Yeah, so if we wanted to say, well, we'd like to make a motion to approve this as a retail limited sales of alcohol, but no more than 50%. Would that
No,
make sense?
to be clear,
Yes.
so I think there is a way that you could do it that way.
Okay.
But I also think, and I think the cleaner way, and it's also based on the request from the applicant,
Okay.
is you approve it as a liquor store use,
Okay.
but you cap it at 50%.
Got it. Does that help?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. And I think you were being clear enough the first time. I just need to hit over the head once in a while. Okay. Other thoughts? Would anybody want to make a motion for, to approve staff rec, to do something modified, anything in between?
If I could make a point of clarification, so like the section of code that applies
Hang on.
to, or it gives the city the ability to audit is really under the use category for retail sales limited. So if we approve it for a liquor store with 50%, we may want to put another condition on it that gives the city the ability to conduct an audit similar to how the city would for a limited retail sales use.
Which provision are you talking about?
Well, I know in the liquor section of Chapter 134, it talks about the city's ability to audit limited retail sales uses to ensure they're meeting the 40%. So,
Is it like a supplemental use regulation that you're talking about?
yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'd like to.
Yeah, sure. Bert, I do appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and I'm going to see what Gary has to say, but Lloyd, we'll give you an opportunity here to add a few comments in here, since while we were in deliberation, since we did bring staff back with, and Bert brings up a good point, then we'll give you a chance to add a couple comments here, because as you can see, we've still got some open conversation here.
My only thought to that conversation is that we're, if we do figure out accommodation to 50% with audits, that we find it totally appropriate for the board to require us to have a hood and vent system to have prepared food as part of that. We feel that's more than a fair trade-off. Jazz, just want to speak real quickly about the site itself and some of the cleanup and stuff that they plan to do on it.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to mention, kind of with removing the stigma from some of the past operators in that building, when we went into the pre-application meeting process, we wanted to make sure that the city knew that we were fully willing to comply with what they requested of us. So we removed the pole sign almost immediately. There was some fire damage that we repaired right away. We're working on closing the garbage enclosure as well. The parking lot, there was a request to close one side of it. We were willing to comply with that as well. We want to make the city happy as well as be able to open this property back up.
So you've got control of the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, thanks, guys. I'll let you sit down now, and I'm going to let Gary have the last word because he is part of the board. He's our counsel.
So in my quick review of these, I do think that the board, either A, I think you could add it as a condition to the approval. I think even if you approve it as a liquor store use, I think you can still get the information that they're requesting. And that's based on my reading of 134,399D, because it mentions any fuel station or retail sales establishment. So a liquor store would be considered a retail sales establishment. It's not limited to limited retail sales uses.
Meaning they could be subject to an audit, so if we wanted to approve it as a liquor store, we could still have a requirement, no more than 50% alcohol sales, and subject to audit, inspection and audit. That's part of the condition.
I
correct?
believe so. I believe that you'd be authorized to do that.
Okay. And I'm just trying to help shape and clarify this, not as any particular thing I'm interested in one way or the other, but just for the conversation. So based on that, anybody want to form any kind of motion here?
What the heck?
Marvelous. Sure, go for it.
Well, just give this a test. I move to approve the liquor at 50%. I don't know what other words I need to put in that to make it more official.
Would you want to include the other related staff conditions?
Of course.
Yes, it wouldn't be retail sales limited then, right? We'd have to take that out. There'd have to be some minor modifications to the staff record.
My understanding of your motion, and I'll just kind of
Sure, jump in.
state it as I understand it, is you would move to approve a conditional use for a liquor store with the conditions that were recommended by the staff.
Correct.
And with the additional limitation of no more than 50% of their receipts would be from the sale of alcoholic liquor, wine, or beer.
And to somehow ensure that that could
There we
be
go.
checked if there are
Yes.
any concerns.
So adding that auditing ability as an
Correct.
additional
And a condition for an
condition.
Sure, that is a possibility.
Okay, thank you both for the clarification. So if that motion is clear enough, would there be a second? Anybody want to second that? Yes,
we-
Heather.
I mean, I thought we were going to add something about the hood, are we not?
Well, I understand that's something he wants to put there, but if he's talking about having a hood and prepared food, to me, it's up to him to decide how he's going to meet his 50%. If he wanted to be the biggest comic book store in Des Moines and sell some liquor and keep it under 50%, I don't care. And if he gets into a hood, prepared food means you're going to have grease traps. I don't know if that's their intent. I don't want to get this board to where we're, in essence, designing the use beyond the issue we're trying to get at, which is to have some relative limitations on the alcohol percentage of sales. How he wants to fill that in, at least to me, is up to him. My recommendation would certainly be you advertise fresh bananas, fresh fruit, milk, vegetables, by golly. We're the fairest way meat counter, whatever you want to do. But my opinion would be to leave that up to them, because then staff has to get into, well, do they have the kind of hood that was really intended and that they wanted? And yeah, that's just kind of my approach to it. Does that help? And I appreciate their approach to putting it out there.
No,
But
I will
I'd rather.
second that motion.
Okay, so you're going to second that
Yeah.
we'd approve the site for a liquor store, for use sales of alcoholic liquor, wine, and beer, but modifications to the staff recommendation so that no more than 50% of its gross receipts are from such alcoholic liquor, wine, beer sales, and those all sales shall be subject to inspection or audit by the city to determine percentages. Okay. That work, Gary?
I think so.
Okay, all right, so motion by Marla, second by Rhonda. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say 4. Dave? All right, Dave's 5. Okay, so that's 1, no wait, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, yes. So we've got 4, 4, and we've got 2 against. So it passes.
I think it was only one against, unless you.
Okay, I got to have people sit straight up, raise your hand so I can see it. So you're in too. I didn't see your hand before. Okay, so it's 5-1, so you got it. You got it by more than you thought. Guys, run it the best you can, okay? I have pretty good confidence you're going to with the improvements you're going to make, but we've seen the site come up too many times. I'd like to see business stick and work there, so give it your best shot. All right, thank you. Okay, so other business for the day. We have one real thing, but we have a second one. That'll come up next month. So next month, we elect 2 officers. We elect a chair and a vice chair each year. So the chair, in essence, has to, carry the meeting through. The vice chair is there to do the same if the chair is not present. So I expect you'll all be running campaigns for yourselves or others over this next month.
Yeah, you bet.
So just kind of keep that in mind for next month. If you have an interest in being an officer, we'll do elections next month.
No.
But the only business we have left today then would be to approve minutes of last month. If you were here last month, we just need you to review the minutes. If there's any changes, say so. If there's none, is there a motion to approve the minutes? All right, motion by Marla, second by Rhonda. All those in favor say aye. Good job. Okay, 6-0.
Wait a minute.
Okay, so that motion carries, and this hearing is adjourned.